All right, so I'm just going to show you two examples. The steps to solving these equations are no different. You just have to remember all of your rules for using decimals and fractions, and you just might need to use your calculator a little bit, so don't let them intimidate you. They are going to be a little bit more challenging, but you just have to make sure you follow your steps. So what I'm going to do with this first equation is I'm going to do the distributive property with both the fractions in front of here. So I'm going to take 1/2 times 2, and I'm just going to write it out. I'm going to make everything a fraction just because I can visualize it maybe a little bit better that way. Oops. And what you need to remember is that any whole number can be turned into a fraction by putting a 1 under it. So for example, with this 2 here, I rewrote it as 2 over 1. And with this 1, I rewrote it as 1 over 1. Okay, so then when you multiply fractions, it's really easy. You just multiply right across. So here I'm going to get 2 over 2h minus 1/2 equals 2/3 h plus 1/6. Okay, and 2 over 2 is the same thing as 1, so I'm just going to get rid of that because 2 over 2 is equal to 1, and 1h is just equal to h. Okay, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take and I'm going to get all the variables together. So I'm going to subtract 2/3 h from each side. And remember, this is like 1h, and so when I'm adding and subtracting fractions, I need common denominators. So I'm going to use this as 3/3 h because that's the same as 1h. So that will give me 1/3 h minus 1/2 equals 1/6. And then what I'm going to do is add a half to each side. And remember that when we're adding fractions, same thing as before with subtracting fractions, is that I need a common denominator. So I'm going to use sixths. So I'm going to change 1/2. I'm just going to cross it off, and I'm going to change it to 3/6 because that's equivalent to 1/2, but it has the same denominator. So I get 4/6, which also I can take and reduce. 4/6 is equal to 2/3. All right, and then the last thing that I'm going to do is get rid of this fraction in front of the h. And so this will be the most important thing. To get rid of a fraction, what you're going to do is multiply by its reciprocal. So 1/3 times 3 over 1. And remember, with equations, what I do to one side, I have to do to the other. Because basically, multiplying 1/3 by 3 over 1 is going to get me 3 over 3h, which, like I said before, 3 over 3h goes away because that's the same thing as 1h, and we don't need that answer in front of there. And then multiplying 2/3 times 3 over 1 gives me 6/3, which means that h equals 2. All right, next example, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to start by multiplying each part here. Okay, 0.5p plus 0.5 times 3. Now, if you can't do these in your head, one option would be to multiply them out. 3 times 5 is 15. One decimal place means I've got 1.5, or you can use your calculator as well. I also just know that half of 3 is 1.5. And 3 times 0.01 will give me 0.3 plus. Now 3 times 0.16, I don't know off the top of my head, so I'm going to multiply that out. 3 times 1 plus 4 and 0.48. I've got 2 decimal places, so I've got 2 decimal places in my answer. All right, plus 0.48 p. All right, now same thing, get the variables together. Now I'm going to make this 0.50 because I want it to have the same amount of decimal places. Let's maybe move, what I'll do is move my p over a little bit so I have a little more room here. So 0.50 times 0.48 will give me 0.02p plus 1.5 equals 0.3. Now I'm going to subtract 1.5. So I've got 0.02p equals, now this one I'm going to go ahead and use my calculator because I know I'm going to get a negative answer here. So I'm going to do 3 minus 1.5. And I get negative 1.2. And then I'm going to divide by 0.02. And I get negative 60 as my answer. So it's just extra important that you would really remember your steps on these, because when you're working with fractions and decimals, you cannot do it in your head.